Now, I have been mentioning atomizers a lot to you, and basically what atomizers are, it's essentially the thing which is going to contain the wick and the wire, which is then, when the wire heats up, is going to vaporize the liquid, and that's what you actually inhale. Now, there are a number of these. Well, in fact, there's loads of them, but what I'll do is I'll just tell you what the basic ones are. After that, there's going to be variations like you wouldn't believe out there. But again, as I said at the beginning, they all fundamentally work exactly the same way. You know, there's the only difference is how it actually, you know, conveys the vapor to you. But the starting point is always some wick of some sort, whether that be cotton or steel mesh or silica wick or whatever. The starting point is always going to be that, with wire going around it and then basically vaporizing the liquid. So I suppose if we go from pretty much, you know, the more basic ones that are out there, it's going to be something like this. This is a cartomizer. Very, very simple. As ever, we have our 510 connection at the bottom, which means that that'll screw into pretty much anything. In this particular case, the wire is contained within this, and rather than it having a sort of a wick, you know, it's got all this filler material around it. So essentially what happens is that when you actually go to fire this, the wire heats up in this, and then the liquid which is around the wire vaporizes, and it comes up through the central channel, and you have something like that, a drip tip on the top, and that's how you vape it. So that's a cartomizer or a carto. The next one would be called a clearomizer. And a clearomizer, again, works the same way, and there's a typical one there. This is an iClear 16, this particular case. And as you can see within this, what you have is these wicks coming up. This says that it'll take 1.6 mils of liquid. This that I showed to you earlier on is maybe it'll be to take around the same amount. I'm not exactly sure, but it doesn't hold a huge amount because it's just as much as the filler material can actually absorb is what that holds. In this case, we're putting actual liquid into it, and the liquid would go up to the top of those wicks there. But inside, as I think I showed you earlier on, and let's just open it up anyhow and have a quick look. When we actually look on the inside, again, we have exactly the same thing. There's our wicks, there's our bits of wire, and that's how that particular one works there. So that's a clearomizer. Now, as far as clearomizers go, as I said, that's an iClear 16. Oh, there's loads of them. There's an EVOD, again the same thing. Now in each case with these sort of connections, you are going to need threading like this. You see this outer threading? Because this doesn't screw into the inner threading, it screws into the outer threading, like that. So with one of these, if you wanted to put it on this, which is a mechanical mod, there's no way of screwing it on. What you'd have to do is get an adapter, which essentially screws in to this connection and then gives you the threads at the top. Just thought I'd get you a connector there. So as I said, something like this is not going to fit on something like that because of the threading that's happening on the inside there, okay? So this is called ego cone threading. So the only way that you can get something like that working is to buy a little adapter like this. Now these adapters, I mean, they only cost, you know, a couple of euro. They're inexpensive, and essentially what you do is you screw it into the top there, and now what that's doing is that's giving you this cone threading that you actually need, so that then what you can do is you can actually screw that on to there like that. So that's how you connect one of those onto a non-ego cone mod. So one of those things there, dead handy to have. Okay, so there's that was our clearomizers. As I showed you, the EVOD, the iClear. There's another one there. I mean, they come in every shape and size, absolutely loads of them. Some of them basically work from the top so that the coil is at the top, because that's what's happening here. The wicks are bringing all of the liquid up to the top, whereas other ones, such as this, and this and the other one there, they're basically bottom coil ones. And if I just open up one of these, which one will I open up? Find one that doesn't have any juice in it. You'll see how this actually works. So this is all full of liquid, and then this here is the head. And you see on either side here, there's little bits of silica coming out, little bits of wick. So essentially what happens is on the inside here, let's just show it to you if we can get this off. On the inside here, what you have is a couple of, they're called flavor wicks at the top, but if I was to actually remove those out and we look underneath there, you see what we have? So there's our wire and our wick, which we now know is common to pretty much everything, all of the atomizers that are out there. So that's the clearomizer. So the next one to look at would be the dripping atomizer. And the dripping atomizer is one, and as it suggests, the name suggests, what you do is, rather than it having a tank on it, like the clearomizer, what this is, it takes a limited amount of liquid, and what you do is you actually just drip in on top of it. So here's one here. This is called an IGO, and when you look at it there, it's a very small little thing. You need a drip tip on the top of it to be able to use it. If I have a go of it, well, I need more than that. That's basically because I have turned the volume down or the power down on this. But if we look at what is actually in this, you take the top off. In this case, it's got cotton inside. Now you've got a positive post and you've got a negative post. And in this case, the cotton is going through it. And that wire will heat up when I actually put some power through it, like all the rest of them. And let's just put it up just a wee bit there. And what it then does is it vaporizes the liquid underneath it. So if you watch what happens here, you see? And that's the vapor being created coming off it. But with that, you can only soak so much liquid into it. So what then happens is, and by the way, if you ever have a dripping atomizer, where the coil is where the hole on the cap should be. So you line up the hole on the cap with the actual coil for the best results. So what would happen with this is you'd be using it away, it would start to get a little bit dry or whatever, and then you use a bottle, any bottle of liquid, you drop a couple of drops, 4 or 5 drops into it, and then that'll keep you going for the next while. And that's essentially how a dripping atomizer works. Now there are lots of different ones out there. They're all essentially the same, working off the same basis. Here's one that I particularly love, which is the Pro Dripper. Completely different shape, but exactly the same idea. There's a different kind of a coil in there, but right at the bottom, essentially you have your wick and you've got your wire going around it. And when you press it, what happens is that the vapor is actually created. So that's another dripper. So what's the next thing I talk about? Next one would be a Genesis style. Well, no, just before I get on to, we go on to the Genesis style one. The one that I would tend to use most, if I can find it, because it's here somewhere, because I just took it off, is a K-Fun. Now, K-Funs have become very well known. Here it is, here. And for good reason, because they're fantastic. And you see there's a tank on that. Now, this is a very, very solid piece of metal, this one here. But essentially what happens at the bottom of this is, if I can find my piece, exactly what happens on the other ones. So if we look here, if you look at this one here, you look at the bottom part here, this is the bottom part of another one. So if we actually look at what's on this, again, you see we've got a positive post and a negative, or whichever way it is around. We've got wire between the two with a number of coils, and then we've got wick going through it. and the wick getting wet, the wire heating up, that's how you actually get your vapor. So this is from a K-Fun. Now this is a more expensive thing. This is, you know, probably, I don't know what they are, maybe about 75 or 80 euro or something like that, as opposed to one of these, which would just be a few quid. So there's a big difference in terms of the price. But at the same time, you know, for a lot of people, there's a big difference in terms of the quality of the vapor and stuff like that as well. So, yeah, the K-Fun would be one of my absolute favorites, and I tend to use that pretty much most of the time. And it usually is sitting on my brass Nemesis, and looks very good. But for a lot of people, that's going to be too big. It's going to be too heavy. They don't like it. But there are plenty of other things out there that will actually suit you, you know, whatever size, style-wise that you actually want. I suppose the next type of atomizer is, and this is an area that I don't really get involved in. I've tried them, and there's some fantastic ones out there. But they're called Genesis Atomizers. And what I want to do here is see if I can get the top off this one to show you how these things work on the inside. Okay. Now, this one isn't actually set up at the moment, but a Genesis style atomizer, and this has got a U-wick in it, okay? Essentially what you would have is you would have wire going around this wick, and then the wire would be connected to one of these and then the center post there. So again, exactly the same thing, except in this case you've got the wires, probably got about 3 or 4 loops going up there at the side. What's happening here is that this, which is made from stainless steel mesh, is, as you can see, is going down into the tank here. The tank will be full of liquid. That means that this mesh draws the liquid up, so it's always wet, so that when you actually fire the button, it heats up here, and then it vaporizes the liquid, and then in it goes. And that's the fundamental of what a Genesis atomizer is. That happens to have a U-wick in it, but in some cases, you know, in most cases, you're more likely just to have one wick sticking up like that out of it. And then the one thing area of Genesis atomizers, a lot of people think that it gives you some of the purest vapor that you can get, and I'm sure it does. But one of the sort of bad sides to it, well, not bad, but it's, you know, I'm a little bit strange this way. I hate leaks. I really hate leaks. And with a Genesis atomizer, just the way they're made, it just means that you always essentially have to keep it upright. You can't be holding Genesis atomizers upside down like that, because it's just going to end up, you know, putting juice out all over the place. So that's that. So I think that's basically all of the various different, the more common type of atomizers that are out there. So essentially what you've got is you've got cartomizers, which is these ones here. You have got clearomizers, which is this sort of thing here. You have got dripping atomizers, which is this kind of thing here, or here. And then you've got Genesis style atomizers, and then you've got sort of hybrid kind of in-betweeny sort of ones as well. But all essentially work exactly the same. I would advise that if you're starting off, start with the more simpler ones. You know, start with, you know, cartomizers are bulletproof. They basically just work. Clearomizers are getting better. In the past, there has been some issues with them. Remember, this is a very new industry, so, you know, people are just, you know, inventing as they go along, and so things are evolving at a huge pace. Certainly at the beginning, there were a number of different clearomizers that were out there that I tried, and they just broke my heart. But they have gotten so much better now. And I mean, one of the ones that I think is particularly good, that's leading the charge at the moment, is the Aspire. And that's basically because of the type of head that they have inside it is very good. Leak proof, works every time. Fantastic thing altogether. So that's a quick run around atomizers.